fact, those statues, they are considered to be the gate of that biggest funeral temple which it was here. Belongs to the time of King Amenhotep III. Amenhotep III, the responsible of the entire temple of Luxor, which we are going to see on the east side of the river later. So he built his funeral temple, as you can see, on the west side. Similar idea of the conceptions, which dating back to the believing of the sun when it rises from the east and set in the west. So by that way we can say life and the afterlife, and nobody can deny that the ancient Egyptians believed of the eternity, and they believed of the resurrections of the afterlife and such things like that.
Right.
During the Old Kingdom kings, they used to build their funeral temples just besides of their tombs, and it was easy for the grave robbers to know where is exactly the position of the funeral temple, and then they can search about the treasures or the tombs which under the ground, which it contains all those stuffs which buried with them. Similar idea like those pyramids in Giza, the funeral temple just besides of them. Kings of the new kingdoms, they did realize that it was easy for the grave robbers to know that. That's why they used to build their funeral temple a little bit far away from their tombs. And this is the development of the idea during that time. That's why all of these areas which in front of our eyes fall by the funeral temples, which dating back to 18th dynasties, 19th dynasties, 20th dynasties of those rulers. But behind of these mountains, there is the Valley of the Kings, which contains their tombs. So by that way, their funeral temple will be a little bit far away from their tombs to don't give any chance for the grave robbers to know where is exactly the position of those mummies or the treasures which inside those tombs. One of them, which in front of our eyes, Amenhotep III. But unfortunately, because right now we are a little bit closer to the river Nile, so that means there are so many floods happened before of 1960, before they built the high dam in Aswan and they stopped all the floods from Egypt, and they saved Egypt by that way. So the floods got to affected the outer enclosure wall, which made out of mud brick. It was made out of mud bricks, and so many of those statues and those columns and those pylons and gates get damaged. So this is considered to be temple ruins of the temple still exist under the ground. That's why the German mission with Americans, with the help of the Egyptian departments of the antiquities, they are still digging the ground over here. Just in order to find those puzzles and those blocks and those artifacts which dating back or belongs to this temple, to making little bit of the restoration. But we have to know that the rules of the restoration, that is not allow for you to add any new rock or any new colors or any new inscriptions on top of the walls. You have to leave it as it was before, or as you found before, to don't lose the activities which are done by the ancient Egyptians. Why we call them Memnons? Because as I told you, by the time of the Greek Roman Alexander the Great, and they began here the Greek Roman period as 332 BC, they did realize the similarity between their god Memnon and those statues. That's why they did call them Memnon statues. And usually they hear the voice came in between, by the air came in between those two statues. For them, it had the same imagination for the voice of Memnon. And they said that Memnon, that god, he came here just in order to protect us as a foreigners in this land. So it's allowed for us to rule the country. Since that time, we still call them Memnon statues. But in fact, they are Amenhotep III. And they are, as you can see in that position, sitting on these thrones. So that means the ruling shape. Because from this moment, we have to learn something, that if you see any statue sitting on throne like that, you have to call it, this is the ruling shape of the statue, or the ruling shape of the king. But once you see any statue has his feet besides and has crossed hands, so that means the afterlife shape of the statue. And we are here in the West Bank, so that means the time of the afterlife. So we have to know the family of the afterlife, which consists of Osiris with his wife Isis and their son Horus. How we can recognizing Horus? Falcon. The falcon face. It is very famous during the time of New Kingdom or Old Kingdom or Middle Kingdom. So by that way we can see the ruling shape, and we know the afterlife shape. And if you see any statue has his leg in forward little bit, so that means life shape of the statue.
The one in the back?
No, he's sitting.
The one in the back is sitting, still in the position of the ruling shape, because they are considered to be the gate of this biggest funeral temple, which later we are going to see completely while our driving to go to Valley of the Kings, which is behind of this mountain.
Thank you.
I just dropped Tom's phone. He's not real happy with me about that.
Hey yo, Julie dropped my phone in the Valley of Kings. Out the top of the mountain, but the shit still rings. They pack another shisha, dripped up in my dish dasha. When it comes to flavor, you know we do it proper.
Ramesses III, to be honest, in history, he considered to be the last great pharaoh, because Egypt after that got less economy and less powerful. It was allowed for any nation to come and to conquer them. That's why so many different nations, they established dynasties for themselves in the history until we reach it to the 30th dynasties, which considered to be the last dynasty of the ancient Egyptian period, which it ruled by someone, his name is Neqta-Nebu, and after that Egypt conquered by Alexander the Great, and that was 332 BC. That's why we say that he considered to be the last warrior king, the last great pharaoh. As I told you, he did found the project of his father, which it was built by Sit Nacht, that entrance or that corridor as you can see, and then KV10, that tomb right here. And that's why he decided to just make a third or anti-axis to the right hand side, and then straight axis again,
Which is this?
Okay, to going to the burial chamber. But unfortunately he had no enough time to finish his burial chamber, because the idea of the tomb, we have to know that the king, when he starts to rule the country, he just give the order for the workers to cut for him his tomb. As long he stay, as long they can build under the ground. So by that way, if he found himself in a good house, he just give the order for the workers to continue the digging under the ground, because this is their way into the eternity, into Osiris, into the afterlife. But if suddenly he died, what they can do? They got only 70 days. We call them the days of the mummification. And in that short period is not makes sense to finish a big burial chamber like which in front of our eyes like that. That's why they have to make the funerary procession, and they have to bury the king after those 70 days on his half burial chamber. Just in case they built that half burial chamber, just in case if he died anytime, so they can find location for his sarcophagus, for his mummy. That's what happened here. That's why, as I told you, this is considered to be one of the unfinished tomb.
Okay.
But if you think with me, do you know, or do you think that anybody knows his death day will be when exactly?
No.
That's why we have to define it here in the Valley of the Kings. There is no finished tomb.
Ah.
This is the idea of the culture, and this is the idea of the conception of the ancient Egyptians. Even if you saw in so many different boxes and so many documentations and videos and such things like this, mentioned that this finished tomb, but in fact it is unfinished, even by some walls or some corridors or some outlines without any carving or something like that. So all of them, they are unfinished, because nobody knows his death day will be when, and they got only those 70 days to have to bury the king or the queen or whatever inside the tomb.